plan from my perspective. But I would like to at least have more than 5 years to consider a dog park, smaller dog park in Harry Todd Park. It would not interrupt with the other activities that go on. But there's a large wooded area in there that could easily be, I think, fenced off and become a dog park. I'm not actually making a decision today. I'm just bringing it to your attention that it could be a great thing for the neighborhood right now. So there's a lot more dogs in the neighborhood. I used to have a dog, and I had to take your dog away. We're still park. Now there's Wardsley Park, but it's still a bit of a drive for the dog. So it'd be nice to have something to do. Second thing is, I don't know if this is the parks thing or not, but in the community center meetings, board meetings that we have, we talk about having events in the park. And I think it'd be kind of cool to have. I know Fort Silicon Park does a lot of these the current festivals and the music events and stuff like that. I would like to have the advisory committee consider having at least one event at Harry Todd Park. It's an incredible venue. It's outdoors like Fort Silicon. And sitting there on the hill and looking at the sunset while someone's playing music in front of you would be an incredible event. I think it's kind of like a what's that winery? Chateau Saint Michelle. I feel like that. It's an incredible venue. Having music. That's the second thing I'd like to have. And I did put that also in advocacy feedback. So that's it.
I think your timing's your information is timely as we're working on a pros plan update. And so thanks for your comment. We appreciate it.
So the dog park in Silicon Park was generated by enthusiasts like yourself, and they really put it together. So, when the public speaks and you get a group of people together, things happen.
Yeah, and Councilmember Brandt said that dog parks typically are a small group of people that actually kind of manage the park once it's in place, help do that sort of thing. So I don't really have that group yet, but I don't know if it's even a possibility for us to start recruiting people that want to do that. So I'm not sure which was first.
And funding's always an issue and a matter of priorities. And so it'll be definitely put in and look at consideration, and appreciate that input. All right, I don't believe we have any unfinished business, so we roll on to new business, and we have a climate change initiative presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay. All right.
They changed sharing, so give me 1 second. Just gotta.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Are you able to share on your side or?
Let me give it a try. I will send a request to you.
Perfect. That's what you.
Okay, looks like it's turned on. But before I get started with sharing, I just wanted to either introduce myself or reintroduce myself because I looked on my calendar and it's been a little bit since I was with you. My name's Tiffany Spear. I am the Planning Division Manager at the City of Lakewood. And so I have worked with Ted Thielen now for over 5 years, I guess. And with Roxanne, since she joined the city as the new Parks Director, and also Nikki York for a number of years as well. Since the time that I came to you, which was November of 2024, as I just mentioned, the number of things have changed. So I wanted to just kind of bring you up to speed. And quite frankly, I don't know how many of you were around at that point and maybe new appointees since then. So for those who have heard some of this before, it'll be a refresher. Otherwise, this will be new information. But talking about things which I hope will be of interest to you regarding a couple of different initiatives that the city has ongoing, and there will certainly be opportunities for collaboration between what I'm talking about and then the work that the board is doing, as well as the Parks Department overall. So with that. All right, is that looking good, Nikki?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, all right, great. So I am going to be talking about what Lakewood has termed its Natural Environment and Climate Change Program, or NEC program. And there's a couple of different pieces to it, but I'm going to start with one study, which again, some of you may have heard of, some of you may have not. I'm going to provide this slide deck to Nikki as soon as I'm done here tonight, and you're welcome to take a look at all of the links within it to go straight to things on our website or at other places that will hopefully help flesh some of this out as well for you. But the idea behind the NEC program is a combination of data that's been collected, community input, climate change concerns, and also trees specifically. Oops. So recently, if you go back, actually now 5 years, 2021, but since then for sure, Lakewood has done a number of things adopting policy and regulations to address environmental concerns, but also try to start to plan for tree preservation and canopy increase citywide. And then also looking at some climate change preparation and resiliency things that the city wants to do. And then also the city now under the state law, we just call it shorthand 1181, now requires us to do by 2029. So within our city's comprehensive plan right now, there's a couple of different goals that address both of those items that I just mentioned. First of all, there's a goal that specifically talks to enhancing the quality and sustainability of Lakewood's urban forest and tree canopy, but also talking in that goal about urban heat island effects, looking at stormwater drainage concerns, and meet environmental quality goals. And then there's a specific natural element goal just called Maintain an Urban Forestry Program to preserve significant trees, promote tree health, and increase tree coverage citywide. And within that second goal, you'll see down here at the bottom, there was an adopted citywide tree canopy cover of 40% by the year 2050. So we're about 24 years away, 25 years away from that number. And I'll be going over a little bit more detail about where that came from. But within that goal as well is maintaining street trees to enhance urban greenery, looking for retention of significant trees and tree stands, as well as restoration, having a city tree fund to help with these efforts, as well as providing public education and research, and then looking to increase equity across the city from a tree canopy and environmental perspective when looking at tree canopy distribution. So one of the key items that the city conducted in 2023 and 2024 was a tree assessment report. We worked with a company called Facet Northwest, who's one of the statewide known or consultant groups that do tree assessments. And when they did that report, it was first released early last year in 25. You can actually watch the presentation by the people who put it together at this link that again I'll provide to Nikki for you guys to see. But that the person actually walks through each of the key areas of that report that I'm going to take a little bit from tonight. Long story short, the assessment report found that the city, as of 2020, because some of the data sources they pulled were existing data sources rather than doing everything brand new, was an estimated 24.4% tree canopy cover. So in order to meet the adopted 40% goal, there would need to be an increase of almost 16% citywide of tree canopy cover within the next 25 years. In the report that looked at the 24.4% existing cover, that broke it down by the type of land use zones where those are where most of it's located. Not surprisingly, probably the residential zones, there's probably 5 or 6 of them, range between about 23% and 48% in each one of those zones. Open space and recreation is about 17% of the canopy coverage. And then commercial and industrial zones, again, not surprising, that's where the lowest coverage is located, somewhere between 5 and 11%. So looking at that graphically, the lighter color means less tree canopy coverage, dark blue is the bigger. And across the city, you'll see that there are areas that in general have less. For instance, along the I-5 corridor, up along South Tacoma Way or Pacific Avenue. And then you have in the air corridor and clear zone over by North McCord Field for JBLM. That's a safety concern. That's why, one reason why there's less tree canopy there. But then you get kind of into the middle of the city, and we're at about a 10 to 20% share in this middle blue, and then up here with Fort Silicon Park and Western State Hospital and Pierce College, also down in the Woodbrook area and some of Springbrook. And then the darker blue, kind of up the mid spine of the city, if you will, you've got around the lakes, again, not a surprising location, but also certain areas where, to be perfectly frank, the people are wealthier and the land use that they have are lower density, meaning there's more room for trees on those properties as well. One of the things also that is in the report is called plantable areas. And this is something that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on just to make very clear that it is an estimated percentage, but it is also got a lot of caveats or assumptions made that the report also tries to make clear. So it is by no means a final number or a very specific number in terms of where and how much, quote, plantable areas for adding trees would be. However, what they did do is take out things like where there's already existing pavement or the land cover where you could not plant a tree. There are, within this calculation, the city manageable lands, and then there's also some private larger parcels as well. So looking at the plantable area, there was about a third of the city that was identified to be that, meaning in some way, some kind of increase of tree cover could, in theory, happen there. And so if you were to take a look at just those plantable areas and not add any tree canopy anywhere else in the city, there would need to be about half of the plantable areas completely covered with trees in order to hit that 40% overall goal that the city council adopted a few years ago. However, again, there's assumptions and caveats, and the idea of taking areas that are, quote, plantable and putting completely covering them with trees altogether and leaving everything else alone is probably unrealistic in any event. Oops. So the assumptions and caveats, first of all, constrained by other land uses, and I'll go into a little more detail here, but it's what kind of land use is planned for that area. So for instance, just I'll pick on Fort Silicon Park. It's an area that's identified as with a lot of plantable area, but the city is never going to cover Fort Silicon Park 100% with trees because it is planned for and currently used for a number of other things that require open space. So the idea that it's a plantable area, yes, but will it ever get 100% covered? No. And in that case, it's because of the uses planned for. So I know this is yellow and it's really hard to read, but this is a map that shows the darker yellow is where there's more, quote, plantable area. But the reasons in more detail as to why this number needs to be taken with some caution is there's infrastructure issues that were not able to be taken into account, such as someday sidewalks are going to go on this public right-of-way that right now doesn't have anything. Or someday there's going to be other transportation improvements that are going to be made. So, for instance, a third of the city's public right-of-way was shown as plantable, but that's, again, not realistic given the fact that there's a lot of areas where there's planned construction of sidewalks and non-motorized rights-of-way within the larger public right-of-way. And so that would take up space that currently doesn't have anything on it and would not be able to have trees at least fully treed once that construction is done. And then, as I mentioned before, for instance, in parks, it would be unrealistic to say all of this is going to become fully treed because it's open right now and there's no plans to put a building on it. There's other things such as sports fields at the school districts. There's on residential property. The fact that people are going to be deciding whether or not they want to add trees on single family lots or if they're going to be in the commercial industrial area, if those business and property owners are going to be able or wanting to add trees to those lots. So the idea is, in theory, there's this area. Whether or not it actually happens is another question. What I wanted to provide here, though, just for giggles, is the land use zones where at least 5% of the city's plantable area is identified. And so you'll see residential zones 2, 3, and 4. But then you also see open space and recreation 1 and 2. And then public institutional would include the parcels owned by the city, like where City Hall is, where all of you guys are right now. But it also includes, for instance, Western State Hospital, Clover Park and Pierce Colleges, and I think library properties, and also hospital, some other uses where, again, there's a specific use on them, and there may or may not be the ability to add trees, but that's certainly something that the city would want to explore. So in essence, the plannable information is there, but it's something that's going to become a tool to use as we move forward rather than assume that it's a fully baked idea and set of data. Within the parks specifically, you have these parks that were analyzed for their plantable area. And so again, like here's Fort Silicon showing that 78% of that is, quote, plantable. The disc golf parcels in Fort Steilacoom, 48% is plantable. Edgewater Park, 89% plantable. So this is just reflecting the type of soil and whether there's anything on it that's impermeable right now. But going forward, whether it's the Parks Board or whether it's the City Council itself or something else, this is food for thought. And for instance, the PROS plan that was just mentioned is getting updated. Maybe this is information that can inform some of that planning as well, if the decision is made that we need to be adding more trees to certain parks. So coming back to that natural environment and climate change program that I mentioned at the start, it is incorporating both our citywide tree canopy and other goals within our comprehensive plan with the requirements under state law that are now something that the city has to meet by 2029. And within the state law, there are climate change and resiliency goals, and then also regulations that have to be adopted. And included within it is a requirement to have an urban forestry program. So Lakewood had already decided voluntarily it wanted to have one, but now it's actually required by state law. So we're following forward with this effort for 2 reasons. There's also regional and statewide greenhouse gas emission reduction goals that the city is responsible to try to help meet. And then there's just other general energy efficiency improvements in city operations, and also the idea of educating, encouraging, and incentivizing both residential and commercial and industrial land uses out in the city to also become more energy efficient. So there's quite a bit encompassed within the NEC program as of now. It's on different timelines. We're in a process right now of continuing to move forward on tree canopy and urban forestry in particular, but there's a number of other things that the city needs to address again by mid-29. So as we get going with our NEC program, these are a number of sets of data or efforts that the city conducted either in partnership with others, for instance, the health department or Pierce County, or that it conducted itself. So the tree canopy cover analysis I just walked through, the adopted energy and climate change work plan from 2022, the state law again, and then a few years ago, the city worked with the University of Washington to have a guide developed on how to create an urban forestry program. Then the urban assessment report and the heat watch report and the canopy analysis report, all done in 2024. Those are going back to those some of those goal ideas about we need to be looking where to be equitable and where trees go per our comprehensive plan goal. I've also provided a couple of other links for you here, the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency and then Pierce County's climate action plans, which are also helping us plan as we move forward. How are we paying for all of this? The city has American Rescue Plan Act funds, which are set aside specifically for the urban forestry program that need to be spent this year. So we are starting to find ways to do that with particularly public-facing events, opportunities for getting trees or other vegetation or other outreach, tree walks, that sort of thing. We have grant funding from the state for the work that has to be done through 2029. And then longer term, we have in place right now a city tree fund. And the idea there is that over time, when development or redevelopment happens and there's either mitigation from tree removal or other code enforcement fees collected, those dollars all go into the city tree fund. We are partnering and hope to continue partnering with a number of groups. The Pierce Conservation District, whom I know the Parks Department and you have interacted with historically, Tacoma Tree Foundation, Tahoma Bird Alliance, our public utilities. So Lakewood does not own its sewer, water, or power utilities, right? So each of those agencies are partners with the city in its planning for future land use, including related to trees and energy efficiency and climate change. Identifying community organizations and neighborhood associations as key community outreach avenues. And then there may be others that pop up as well. So it's actual dollars and then in-kind and other low or no cost partnerships that we hope to take advantage of. The program is not coming up with new policies, strategies, or actions. It is taking things that are already in place and trying to braid them together and make an efficient program for staff and the public to experience. The program is cross-departmental, meaning it's not only planning and public works where I sit, but also Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. The communications department, the legal department, and even the police department will all be involved in engaging and working on this program over time. And then we're also trying to make sure that there's as much internal coordination with other things going on, including, for instance, your PROS plan update that you're involved in yourself, as well as the county's hazard mitigation plan, which it's on almost adopted at this point. So where do we sit with progress to date on that program? Back in 2025, I'm already saying back, Parks and Recreation element, Utilities element, and the Capital Facilities element were all updated to make sure they met state law in the city's comp plan materials. Right now, this is our focus, and this is where so much, I think, public interest is going to come, is the tree-related planning and projects. It's, again, the urban forestry program. It's updating our climate change and resiliency element and our land use element to include things related to anticipating what climate change effects may be felt in the city of Lakewood, looking at green spaces, urban and community forests, and again, coming to that with an environmental justice lens. It's also including an analysis of risk to lives and property from wildfires. It's developing an urban heat resiliency strategy. And then it's also turning back to the city, coming up with native and climate resilient planting plans for municipal projects. Back up at the very top, the partnership with the Pierce Conservation District, as I mentioned, we have a couple of events planned and we may have more by the end of the year. And then we are in the middle of coming up with a scope of work and opportunity for Tacoma Tree Foundation to partner with the general public, including businesses in 26 and beyond. Once we get through that big focus that's happening now on urban forestry and climate change, 27 to 29, we're going to be continuing the urban forestry program, but we're also going to be looking at transportation in particular. And so taking a look at demands and needs, current and future in the city, and how that affects our transportation system, not only for single occupancy vehicles, but mass transit as well as non-motorized, so bike and ped. And then there will probably need to be some changes again in our comprehensive plan in order to comply with everything that is now required in state law. So where we sit now, we are in the process of speaking with the city council and getting their direction and approval for some kind of advisory board, and I'll just call it the CAB for now, the Climate Advisory Board, that would be a potentially a standing advisory board similar to the Planning Commission or to yourselves that would be focused on the natural environment and climate change program. The CAB would need to have a well-rounded group of people involved and would be not only dealing with the information that I just walked through for priorities between now and 2029, but other things beyond that as the city continues to mature its urban forestry program and continues to look at a variety of topics that fall within this idea of natural environment and climate change. We do have, as I mentioned a couple times now, a few things scheduled for sure. We are going to have our first urban tree sale in partnership with the Pierce Conservation District at the Pavilion on May 9th. And then there's going to be, as part of the Lakewood Street Festival on May 29th, another opportunity for hopefully some tree giveaways and recognitions of folk that are involved with this work. And we hope to also have additional tree walks and outreach happening this year. If you want to look more into this stuff in more detail, here's additional links in this slide deck that I will provide. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
I've got one for you here. I'm currently working with Northwest Youth Corps under a federal urban forestry grant that they've received. And in fact, this week, and we have 3 more weeks this winter, physically planting out in the South Sound wildlife area. That might be a good partnership to include in your communities and groups. They received a it's Northwest Youth Corps. They received a federal urban forestry grant for hundreds of thousands. And we've spent probably 50 or 60 of it here at Lakewood at the South Sound Wildlife Area doing plantings. And they're a great resource to connect to.
I interacted with them a little bit, and so did Ted with our ARPA program, actually.
Right.
So it's good. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts?
In the public property included, was it school districts were included in that? So in other words, public properties that are available to be planted?
Yes,
School
it
district
was.
is included?
Yes, it was city property, it was school district, it was Pierce College and Clover Park, and then it was also like the hospital, St. Clair's Hospital campus, and other private property spots that are larger in acreage. And the idea is, you know, there's only so much the city can do, obviously, to address this problem by itself. There's got to be progress and partnership with others in order to be this fully successful in reaching the citywide tree canopy goal. And so we hope to be establishing further partnership opportunities, not only with the school district, but the colleges.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm concerned about the street tree plantings, whether it be Washington, South Tacoma Way, whatever. It doesn't look like we're choosing appropriate trees. We have trees that are already struggling to get into electrical wires. We've got columbar trees, which don't give us the canopy that we really should be looking at. We're planting a lot of deciduous trees that concern me because the drains get plugged up and we have a lot of wind and a lot of water, rain coming down. So who is responsible for some of this tree selection, which needs to be evaluated and really looking at possibly more broadly trees and see what the appropriateness is in different locations?
Right now, I would probably point you to our public works side of planning and public works. They deal with capital and transportation improvements, and street trees are part of those generally. But as you saw in what we have to do between now and 2027, we are planning to create a new native and climate resilient tree planting strategy for city projects. So that effort hasn't begun yet, but it will be happening here in the next 18 months. And so that may change what you see over time, the Public Works Department using.
I have a question.
I'd be curious, given the size of Lakewood, is there a community within the state that's close to the 40% canopy? I'm just curious.
There are, and actually in the report itself, it gives you a comparison. It's not Burien. There's something up in King County that's about at 41% right now. But for instance, we are at 24.4. Tacoma's at 20%. So depending on where you are isn't the only factor. It's also how old the city is, how many people live in it, the type of port activity, for instance, in Tacoma has affected its tree canopy cover. So the answer is yes, there are jurisdictions that are at 40%. Whether it's realistic for every jurisdiction to be able to reach that number, I don't know.
One more. Is any part of the tree program doing anything that catalog or identify like historic or legacy trees within the city?
That has not happened yet, but it certainly can be part of the urban forestry program. And I would assume it would be. Our regulations require property owners to treat, quote, significant trees differently as they are developing on their property. And then also Gary Oaks are treated as in a special way in our code right now. But as far as I know, we have the basis of that kind of a list. The public physical walking around and cataloging trees effort that was part of the tree assessment report I talked about was on public rights of way and city-owned properties, and then like the school district let us get on their property, so did Pierce College. And so there's actually measurements of certain areas of the city, the trees that are there. And so we could use that as a starting point to say if it's a certain diameter, breast height, size, or if it's a certain species, whatever, maybe that's the criteria to get going with that kind of a list. But we're by no means at a finished product.
Thank you.
Legacy trees are addressed in the new.
We're part of they're
code,
part of the
yeah.
code, yeah.
Because we went through that.
Yeah.
We're still fighting that though.
Any other questions for Tiffany?
The plant sale that's happening in May, is that native plant material primarily, or what's the list?
Yeah, it is. I don't have the exact list, but the Pierce Conservation District is putting it together. I think there's going to be 5 or 6 different types of trees people can select from. We're going to be starting to advertise that here in the near future. I just sent them our mailing list we're going to use to try to get people aware of it, but we'll be reaching out through you, through the neighborhood associations and other ways to try to get the word out.
Yeah, we'd like that list when we could get it, definitely.
Sure.
Just to piggyback on it, so they're actually a pre-sale, so there'll be a campaign, and I know the last day of that is Parks Appreciation Day, so we plan in the promotions of Parks Appreciation Day or even on site to encourage the May 9th people who bought trees at this significant discount through the campaign will be able to pick them up.
Okay. So it's a pre-order, not just
Yep.
come up and buy in that
Then
day.
they'll have, and I think they'll help work with the selection of the right one.
So is it in bundles of 5 like the Pierce Conservation District has done in years past?
Are they bare root?
Bare root and bundles?
I can't give you that detail off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
It's getting kind of late.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
And I've seen it go both ways when the
Usually
concert is.
December
Yeah.
pickup or March pickup
Yeah.
from their office.
Anyone else
All
for
right.
Tiffany? Nice job. Thank you, Tiffany.
thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
All right, we roll into a director's report now.
Well, there's a lot going on. And things you all knew, but now I'm getting to know. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of the things on the capital list in particular, because I think it'll help. The legacy plan, we are moving quickly, like through that process. But kind of amazingly, I think we're back here. We're actually before council on April 13th. The agenda has us here April 28th. We're at Planning Commission May 8th, and all that really is going to be highlighting level of service and demographic change. So a little bit of the demand and need. But from that, in July, we're going to be releasing the draft plan. something that I fits that even with some of the conversations here, the last plan didn't have anything on trails very deeply. It didn't have things really to govern kind of open space. And so these new comp plan elements and what was just talked about need to be a piece of that. Always let me back up. Ted's seeing it, everyone. Ted.
Hello.
So yeah, I think we talked last time, David has left, Ted has joined the department as a planner. So he and I are working this legacy plan through. You're going to see more of him. He's also tied to this urban forestry initiative, and he's helping with the Camp Murray boat launch master plan. So there's going to be a lot of these planning initiatives that he's part of. One thing on level of service, just want to kind of plant with you now that we're getting into is, the plan is important to capture how we serve our community. And we have neighborhood parks and community parks that are supposed to be within 10 minutes of everyone's walk. So really looking at who doesn't have a park within that 10-minute walk. And some of that, it might be things that fill that gap there. And that's kind of one piece. I know people want new things in their park, but we've got people who don't even have that. But community level parks and now wards in American Lake, they're very much updated, have these special use facilities. So some of this is, when did we recently change those? Kind of when are we in the plan looking at what the community said they wanted, but also where that infrastructure is and when we need to trade things out, and looking then at equity about when and how that's happened. And not every park will have, community park will have the same things, but they're all probably going to have 3 to 5 special use kind of features. And so who's due next? And somebody might not have that in their park, but we know there's a skate park at Kiwanis, or, those type of things, and how we handle that. And then we have what I just call citywide experiences. And these are the things that we do kind of for the whole city in areas that are well-defined and naturally defined by who and what they are, meaning we've got Port Silicon Regional Park. That's not in everybody's, and that is going to host our signature events because it has all the infrastructure there and people can get there. But then the water properties, yes, we've got some waterfront parks, but as you've heard about the street ends and getting water access, that's all really around how people throughout the city can go and experience those things. And that is going to be a different distance because we can't go where the lakes are. And then the downtown, and especially greening the downtown and how the downtown serves more on the commercial, but is also the Colonial Plaza. Some of the council initiatives really are about those type of experiences. So what the legacy plan says, here's your gaps, here's your assets that are running out, and here's all the new special use features people want to do. Here's that regional and citywide experience. What does all that look like, and how does that get staged over the next 12 years? So by the end of April, really kind of giving you that first look at what the community told us in the outreach, what our system is looking at, and what our level of service gaps are, will be something we're going to love to share and get your feedback on, and should even have some of the preliminary trail information again, which wasn't there before, but we're really just pulling the non-motorized plan and the Pierce County Trails plan to look at what it is and pulling from this tree canopy need, to understand those elements. So that should really be educating the recommendations that come forward. And again, I think it's right after 4th of July, Independence Day is the target date for that draft plan to be available and then out. And we really have the summer to talk with you all and go to some of the communities that we knew were not as deeply as involved in the other outreach, to really talk and meet with them and make sure we've covered all interests with that. That said, Fort Silicon, the interpretive trail is underway. Edgewater Park, we are moving through the hearing gambit and permitting gambit. I think there we acquired an additional parcel that used to be shoreline residential. So we have to change its designation to urban park so that the entire site is under that proper designation before we can actually move it into the permitting process. And those hearings are all between March and May of this year. So that's good. The other projects, some of them because we're both in this intense period with Edgewater and then Nisqually Interpretive Trail, they're getting very, Nisqually is close to construction, and Edgewater, we're trying to get through to this permitting side. But Ward's Lake is still in closeout. Americans Lake is still in closeout. So until those get tied up, then Stacy will be moving forward with the Port Silicon Park parking in Oak Brook Park, and those are probably going to be more fall projects that are happening. I'm scheduled to go to council on the 16th of March to give them an update on the H barn. And the big thing will be, there's a desired move to 60% design, but we have to answer what we're designing. And that really key is the difference between, are we renovating what's there, or do we need to demolish the barn structure, not the silos, but then rebuild.
Is that a study session or is that a regular council?
It is a study session, yes. So as that kind of gets prepared to go forward, that link will be shared. And if you're interested in participating, and a lot of that then goes with our timeline, project costs, the ability, we can control timeline a lot better if we're not doing renovation. But we will incur some obligations through the historic review to preserve the history of the site in other ways, right? So, we're just looking through all those trade-offs so that we can get council direction to move forward with that. And I think we already discussed that went from 7 to 14 million, right? Okay. So that's the bigger part of what then, how is that gap most likely to be closed and what requirements go with those funding sources. We had the final interview with consultants today. So by the end of the week, we will be selecting the Camp Murray launch master plan consultants. And so we're looking at their contract, whoever it's with, being approved on March 16th as well. So then we'll be getting right into kickoff and getting that moving forward. And there's about a 6-month window of them doing site feasibility, working with the steering committee, and then putting some options out for public comment. Anything else on a capital project that didn't highlight the people?
Well, this would be new business, but I guess it bleeds into Camp Murray and American Lake. And if you want to take it as new business, it's fine. But I have a concern about American Lake and the responsibility of the park department putting projects on American Lake, and who's being responsible entity for, and the whole purpose is a boat wash. We have to have washing stations for boats. It's getting to be a real priority with cleaning up the lake and maintaining the lake. And I know that the waters of the lake belong to the state, but the city has taken responsibility in creating parks and having people get into the lake, whether they be the motoring or whatever. But I think the park department and public works, and I'm on the LMD, I'm the chair, and we're really getting concerned because the farther we get into the milfoil, the more we're cleaning up. And if we are allowing boats to get in, and this is my drill, if we're allowing boats that are not washed into the lake, we're never going to clean up American Lake. It's not even get close to being pristine. We're getting new, and I wish Janet was here because Janet and Kurt Spenga are divers and they've been doing raking of milfoil. It's really getting to be a big concern, and I'm sorry of bleeding into the park department, but I talked to Mary Dodsworth about it, who's like, we don't have money. Well, if we're going to keep the lake dirty, what are we going to do? It's not even going to be close to being a pretty lake to be in, and nobody's going to want to be in. And we know why Harry Todd, we started on the LMD. I hope you all know. and I don't have to repeat it. So I think with Camp Murray that we're actively doing something with the military or Camp Murray. So we need, and they have lots of boats over there. So this needs to be a driving force that we do look at that. And that's one thing. I've got a comment about Edgewater too, if you'd like to hear me bleed again. I didn't like the comment about needing more grass. What we need is more non-mowable cover, whether it be some kind of other turf. We need to get out of the water business and watering. People need water. We need to have drier landscapes, and we need to have some ability to do that. And we need to have consultants. I don't know if these projects are all done in-house. In San Francisco, we did our own project, so I'm not familiar with how they actually get done here. But we need to be more observant of drought-tolerant native plant materials. And there's a ton out there. I've got almost an acre of Arctostophilus that I've got 60 different varieties on my property now. I don't feed the birds. I don't do anything. I don't water. So anyway, that's my bleeding. I'm sorry, Jason.
Well, related to that, there's some dates on here now that I've been going through that, your point, this is a master plan. And part of that is really understanding there's a lot of different competing interests, and there's also protections and requirements that are being given in this project. But I don't think we're going to be as ready like in May with the consultants coming on board, because they'll just be getting into the site analysis and what's going on. So I'm thinking closer to the July date. Does that sound right, Ted? That I think with the consultant timeline we're talking about, that they would have enough of the site restrictions and a couple rounds with the steering committee to then be able to share directly with this group.
Yeah, this has always been just a
Look,
roadmap
that's
as you guys
Yeah.
get through it and
Yeah.
are ready.
So
We adjust and move
don't
as necessary. Yeah.
You know, some of us.
No, that's not uncommon.
Okay. Perfect. And I think also. We'll wait to get the schedule. Special event updates, as Tiffany mentioned, and there was a great kickoff to the city's 30th year on February 17th at council. But our first celebration with the community is looking at the street festival. And we just felt like, one, we're kind of thinking of this 30th anniversary as deep roots, right? If you plant a tree and you allow it to grow, 30 years, it's starting to get some good roots in there, and it's starting to be stable enough to really flourish. And using that symbolism and having the urban forestry initiative, we're like, she said, this is a great time to have the Tacoma Tree Foundation there. Really greening up the plaza and having conversations with the community about the initiative as well. Again, this is the other side of the first delivery of trees and the tree sales, but I think they're hoping to get it into a better rhythm and better timing on different things moving forward. So you'll see some of that happening there. The Parks Appreciation Day site are established. The materials are still being kind of produced, so they will be out by the time we're here at our next meeting. So I'll have all those and kind of talk with you about what's going on in each site in case you are able to come out, choose one of those. And as I mentioned, it will be the last day for this initial urban tree sale. So we'll be promoting a piece of that. The Northwest Youth Corps, they're actually doing some work because we got them for a week as well at Springbrook. And I think it's actually the week before Parks Appreciation Day. I think they're, more in that week there. All right. The kind of emergent policy in this ties in with the urban, with the comment. I'm hoping that at the June meeting, we should have that policy about community sponsored projects. And the dog park is a perfect example. We've got a cricket group in front of us. There's just always, and people are passionate and they have, different, again, how do we change out the special uses? When the legacy plan is adopted at the end of the year, we will have that summary of what collectively the community said are those new amenities they'd like to see at a site. So we know kind of the first stop is looking at the classification of the park that they're asking, whether it's in there as something that we were already told the community desires, so that it's already been vetted. If it's not on that list, then we need to do some other form of outreach in order to kind of validate that it's really important to do in the city, but also at that site. And we get a lot of outside requests. So how do we know that residents in the city of Lakewood are as passionate about that thing as folks were talking about? And is it something that, one's enough? And I don't know, what that might be like. Is one set of pickleball courts enough and one skateboard park? So once we have that, nobody else gets it. And is it something where everybody though can have a dog park because everybody, what I was gonna say, loves their dog more than their kids. There's more households with dogs than there are with kids now, so, how much where a little bit, like spray parks, people are really excited, but those you need a lot of parking for, and there's a lot of intricacies, so those might have to be underneath, right? So, it'll help us get to that. Should we, it's always where and how much and should we is the first thing, and then going about, well, when's it planned to be uploaded? When is it already in the schedule? And if it's not in the schedule, that means trading something else out, which isn't easy to do. Unless we're able to say, oh, that's pretty low cost, low barrier, that's something we can partner on, or here's the next grant cycle, and we're not already committed to something. So that'll really kind of give us a good roadmap for how to respond to people and how to give them, this is what the process looks like. So we're hoping to have that really here, and I'm thinking maybe June would be a good time to bring that forward to the group.
I think that's great.
We already talked kind of, those are other kind of emergency policy things coming forward. I know the staff has started creating a matrix of safe places after school and over the summer, which is a piece of Lakewood's promise to youth. There's 5 promises, but with that, there's also opportunities to get marketable skills and meaningful service, which is more for the older age teens, and a healthy start, which tends to be the birth to 5, but also more of the healthy living things. So the Lakewood's promise is taking the first look at that, and that's actually going to be a big piece to educate our legacy plan as well. And as that gets, drafted there, we're going to be able to bring a copy of that back here and get your thoughts on what's missing, or really how some of this is like, a lot of it we partner with. So how big of a role do we do in direct service, and how much does the city keep doing what it's doing now? Well, which is, funding or supporting some of those organizations through human service dollars. But it'll be a chance for people to see and for us to answer that question. What are we doing, right? For kids, how are we keeping them? Those were my highlights.
Great. Any questions on that? Hearing none, I would entertain any reports from board members. Hearing none. Our next meeting will be March 24th, unless you come to the study session for the H Barn, which I plan to attend. But we'll meet here on the 24th at 5:30. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:26. Because we learned last time we don't have to take a vote.
So do you have partners for parks joining you on that study session, or it's gonna be you and the drafting department from the city, or?
They haven't confirmed who's coming back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna send somebody
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. you know, because they're coming to both contribute and reinforce, but also to kind of learn and understand the impact.
So this
right?
is a give and take.
Yeah.
And it's moving forward. It's not a lake, it's a river.
Mm-hmm.
We found the rapids apparently. When they went to study the actual cost of building that.
Yes. So, yeah.
Bigger kayak.
Yeah. You know, and you know, those who built, like, to go to 60% design, it's like the engineers need to know, you
Yeah,
know.
some answers. We get the other answers, like what's really gonna
Because
cost.
I'm like, because I walked, well,
Yeah,
so,
excited for that.
yes, yeah, I mean, it's a big lift, but we found sources for most of it. Now, those sources have to actually come to fruition.
That's promising, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having sources identified is a big one.
Kate, Dennis, Ben, definition of a tree.
Well, see, the city's definition of trees, and I was on the tree ordinance committee, is really, you know, your basic tree. And when we're planting in the wildlife area, things like 9-bark and some of the large shrub varieties that are kind of between a bush and a tree, we count as trees and really should count as canopy. You know, so you look up tree and it's not gonna be, it's a little bit of matter of opinion, particularly when you're looking at canopy cover. So, I mean, that's how we're dealing with it too. And some of the canopy cover, they're looking at talking about, you know, like the South Sound Wildlife Area.
Right.
It's oak savanna. It's not supposed to be completely covered, but we're planting oaks around the peripheral area because that's where we can put them. So,
The drainage is good, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So it's a lot of moving parts of that
Yeah.
urban
Oh, yeah.
forestry
Well,
program.
trees can be defined by horticulturists.
Yep.
Tree people, botanists.
Yep.
And the landscape architects. And there's different purposes in all of them.
Absolutely. And they've all got a
So,
main
you know,
focus.
As a landscape architect, the 12 trees don't count in my life. It depends on where they're going. And if we're looking at canopy, a columnar tree to me does not provide canopy. It
Okay.
provides green half the year.
Hmm.
But it doesn't, it's not a canopy. It doesn't, there's no shade.